The competitive positioning step of the pricing process is the game changer. It's the extra step that most people don't go when it comes to actually pricing a house for market value. Competitive positioning is all about finding competitive advantage so that your house is prime on the market to elicit showings and offers. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use the quadrants to really understand competition, really understand what required advantage is, so that you can position the home for a required advantage and really establish the competitive positioning range. Now let's walk through that with this example that we've been working through this whole time. So going right back to where we left off, under this positioning button here, you'll find the active data. Now again, this is from our search of that price range in that comparable locale, which in this case was the city of Wellington. Now made automatically for you, you can see this is our positioning scattergram. Now in this case, it's a very hot market. So because of that, the orange here are the properties that are under contract and the green are the properties for sale. Now, what you can see is almost everything around our square footage out here is currently under contract. The ones that are not are the ones that are really low square footage and trying to sell for a really high price. So in this case, if we're thinking about we're about 3,500 square feet and we're thinking about 490, you can see everything around us is under contract. So it's going to be kind of one of those situations where we don't really have a lot of competitive positioning to do. However, just for this example, let's imagine that one or two of these were for sale still. Now, being out here, being a larger square foot and costing less, that puts us in a competitive advantage. Now, we also know that the odds are in our favor, but that there aren't a lot of closings to be had. So we wouldn't really necessarily want to be in a situation where we're at a competitive disadvantage, meaning we are less square footage priced more, or we don't necessarily want to put ourselves in a situation where we're just a straight tie. Meaning, let's say we listed, at 500,000 and this one was for sale at 495. Yes, they're less square footage, but we're priced more, so now that's an even deal, and it's a coin flip on where that house will sell. So in many cases, what you're going to do is you're going to look around this range up here and see where on this you end up being a tie and where you end up being an advantage. Now, again, this is a little bit twisted because they're mostly under contract in this case. But if these were for sale still here at 500,000 and we listed at 500,000, these homes, even though a little bit smaller than ours, if they're in nicer condition or they have a finished basement or they have these other fixed up things, we'll see a coin flip situation. Now, if we're below them, meaning we cost less and we're larger square feet, we now are a value. So it's kind of that way to position yourself to have that competitive advantage so that the buyers are seeing your house and putting the offer on your property. Now that being said, there's always a range. There's a situation where you'll be able to see and say, hey, we beat these four, we lose to this one, or whatever it might be, where you're in this competitive positive situation, but there's always going to be a range in those values. In this case, for example, we could probably be, well, in this case, since it's all under contract, you could be basically anywhere along this line and still be in a good shape. However, you never want to go crazy over the top because you still have to appraise. So that's what you go back to the pricing scattergram for, and you look at it and say, you know what? Looking back at this graph here, even though we could be way up here at a higher price or something like that, we still probably wouldn't appraise then. So what we want to do is find the price that elicits the best offers, best showings, and can drive the price up if we need to in a competitive situation, but we want to make sure that we're still appraising. Now, I said earlier I want to show you the quadrants. Now, in this case, again, these are under contract, but just for the example here, I want to show you what it would look like if those weren't. So, let's go back to our positioning data, and let's see here. I'm going to add in a property done by clicking this button here. I'm just going to call it subject, because this is our subject property right here that we're adding in. And we're going to go ahead and say the total square footage is 3,500 square feet. And we're looking at a price of, let's say, 490,000 was what the last graph was. Okay. So if I do that, go to create graph options and show the quadrants, we'll now see a graph with a red dot that has some lines attached to it. Let me move this so you can see the red dot. Okay. Now in this case, since we're on the edge of the graph, you don't see the quadrants as much. So I'm going to move it over. We're going to change our mindset here and change that subject property square footage to 3,000 to take a look at those quadrants so we can really discuss it. So going here, changing our thought, and the house is now only 3,000 square feet. I don't know what happened to that 500. It just disappeared. But we're going to create this again. We're going to show the quadrants, and I'm going to show the value boxes as well that you can add to this graph. Now, what you can see is we have a quadrant situation where if these were for sale still, you could say here, the property is located near this area, provide less space for the dollar. These are basically a tie. I mean, because realistically, you're 100 square feet less, something like that, but they're priced more. So then it looks to special features and conditions and amenities, and then we're having this situation where the buyer is really having to weigh their options. Whereas if we're priced down here, we're out here, we're probably having an advantage. So what we're trying to do is trying to guide our discussion to really finding that competitive advantage that's the right value for them. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but you're just undercutting the price. In most cases, when you get the right price to get the right amount of showings and right offers, what ends up happening is the offers will drive the value up. It will drive it up to market value. So this step here is all about finding the competitive advantage so more people want you, and then that price will go up.